You're listening to The Extraction, conversations on the systems and strategies behind dental practice growth with Colin Ambler and Kyle Bergman. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Extraction. A little bit of a hiatus as one of my co-hosts did his best Carmen Sandiego impression. But we're back. Kyle Bergman, along with the co-founder and CEO of TeamCare, Colin Ambler. And today, what better way to start the new year than with one of the greatest humans I know and one of the greatest humans involved in the dental industry, Cory Schoebel. Cory is the Chief New Client Officer at Chrisad, who was a brand that was instrumental to the beginning and genesis of TeamCare. But for those that don't know Cory, I was thinking about how to introduce Cory, and I think maybe the best metaphor, because I love to speak in metaphors, is he is the Jerry West of the dental industry. And maybe some of you are saying, "Who's Jerry West?" Well, if you're familiar with the NBA logo, the NBA logo is Jerry West, who is one of the Hall of Famer original best players in the NBA. And every player, Jordan, LeBron, everyone is a descendant of Jerry West. Everyone ran because Jerry West walked, and that is Cory.
Oh,
Cory,
thanks, man.
it's a Kyle original, but Cory, it's such an honor to have you on the pod. Welcome. How are you?
Thank you, guys. Thank you. I'm honored to be on the pod. I'm excited to do this. So, I'm doing great. I'm in Michigan today, driving around, seeing dental practices like I have for the last 30 years, and glad to take an hour out of my time and get with you guys because you have also been instrumental in the development, growth, and security of our business. So, anything I can do to give back to you and share our experiences, let's do it, man. We've benefited from each
Love
other
it.
tremendously. Yeah.
I love
Yeah,
it.
awesome. So I'll jump in and I won't give as the big intro that Kyle did, but I'm one of many that also has this man crush on Cory. Thinks so highly of you. You're a huge friend of the pod, a mentor, a friend to me, and we're excited to have you here. And if people don't know about it, Cory's part of Chrisad, and I've probably known Cory for 10 plus years as
Yeah.
my wife's practice, Noble Dentistry, is a longtime client of Chrisad. And, our practice now today is a successful, thriving, multi-associate practice. We do about $7 million a year. We're a big practice. We started as a scratch practice that was struggling to even get over the hump and pay bills. And we certainly would not have done any of the stuff we're doing, much less the parlay into TeamCare from kind of me. But Chris has been such an influential group and advising us. And since going with TeamCare, I've kind of had a wider view of some of the rest of the world, some different consulting groups, and I still go back to so many of Chris Ad's core principles that they just gave us these playbooks that were so fundamentally clear. And I think that it reminds
Nice.
me sometimes about how I would have wrote less if I had more time. And I think that Chris has been going on this for some 40 years. And Cory, your experience is tremendous. I think when you guys talk about stuff, and I want to get into some of these concepts about availability and how to create capacity and market to fill those as
Yeah,
such
sure.
bread and butter concepts that you've been doing. But I just wanted to kind of intro the fact that, Cory's from Chris that has such great experience. Cory, if for people that don't know, Cory, I mean, you tell us. You're out in Michigan. I mean, it's something that I
Yeah,
really
man.
love about Chrisad is you guys. I look at like the bumblebees. You're actually going boots on the ground. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're pounded like you're boots on the ground, and you're going door to door. I mean, you tell us, but like, you're
I will do the
actually
best
in
I
office.
can. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
You're
we prescribe to that belief still to this day in a largely digital age that the most effective change occurs eye to eye, face to face, knee to knee, sitting down, implementing it, making sure that the people you're tasking with certain adjustments understand it fully. And we tried it, man. I mean, the best way I can put this is we tried doing a digital relationship 5 or 6 years ago because we spend an inordinate amount of money on travel, a lot.
yes.
And not only did we save a little bit of money, we lost a lot more money by losing the relationship and the touch and the knowledge and the experience, and you just can't replace it. no matter how hard we tried, and maybe we didn't do it correctly, but we could not replace the connection that you had being in the office with a digital footprint or a digital connection. And man, yeah, we travel. This is my 28th year doing it. Every week you go see 30, 40 dental practices. And I get the luxury of going all over the country and sometimes all over the world, but I wouldn't trade it for anything because when you go see that many offices, you can detect patterns almost instantaneously. And I take great pride in knowing that my fingers are on the pulse of this industry and I'm not sitting behind a desk and I'm not theoretical. There's nothing hypothetical about my experiences. That I'm in it just like you are. I'm in the sewers every day. I'm crawling around in your data every day. And thanks to
Oh,
you
it's
guys. Again,
amazing.
you've made my life so much easier, just so you know. I used to have to rely on a practice to tell me how they're doing, which was very opinionated.
Yeah,
Now
misleading.
you can't hide behind the opinion anymore or the belief that you're doing okay. It is what it is, you guys. That
Well,
is what
Yeah.
TeamCare has made our
there's
client
something.
base. It is what it is. Yeah.
So I want to, there's a lot of people that are consultants now in the industry and
Sure.
maybe lean on technology a little too much. A lacrosse metaphor that I know the three of us will get is it's not about the stick, it's how you wield it.
Yeah.
And you just mentioned it. You are analogous to the Beatles, who spent over 10,000 hours playing shows in Berlin before anyone knew who they were. And you can, within 5 minutes of walking into a practice, understand what's going on. That is impossible to do if you just have a digital relationship. Now, things like TeamCare can be a catalyst for you to get there quicker and
Sure.
asynchronously.
Yeah.
But there's things that you just, and I had the pleasure of witnessing you in a few practices
Yeah, we
last
got
year
to
when
travel a little bit last year.
we
Yeah, it was
got to
fun.
travel a little, and it was, can't, 8-year-old Kyle would be like distraught at what I'm about to say, but I had so much fun watching you in a business environment in dentistry. It was artful talking to practice owners, like sure, like it's a really, it's a beautiful thing.
Well, let me elaborate on this a little bit more, you guys. So the travel is a part of our business, and it's how we legitimize our consultancy. Is that when you work with Chrisad, we don't. And this is the funny part because the intersection of my job as chief new client officers, I get to talk to all the potential business, which also is just. I mean, I can't trade that for anything. That gives me such insight into the thought processes of dentists, and then being active as a practice growth analyst in Michigan and Illinois and some of these other states, what dentists kind of think they want is not what most of them need. And I don't think I'm the person that discovered this. But they call in and they ask for new patients, and most of them assume that all they really need to solve their problems is an influx of new bodies. And that's just not the way we do business. So I mean, we go on site to try and figure out where the points of friction are. Where does the patient loss occur? What are the impediments? Are you training your team the right way? Not only from the phones, but to the scheduling, the efficiencies, the recare, the cancellations, the no-shows. And our metrics are pretty simple. We don't have any secret doors that nobody else has. We just follow them and we enforce them. And having that second level of management and that second level of enforcement has been instrumental to some of these guys because they're just time constrained. Most dentists that I know do not have the time to manage it effectively, to train their teams effectively, and not to say we do either, but man, we can certainly help. We can help go a long way to making sure they understand what's important, why it's important, and enforce the importance. So yeah, you have
Yeah.
to do it on site. And then, you guys, again, back to you. I can look at schedules. We were talking about it earlier. I can see a schedule and I look every day. And just a minute or two a day looking at somebody's schedule or looking at what happened yesterday, looking at their pre-appointment, looking at their treatment plan closures. It helps me understand where I need to focus. I don't need to
Yeah.
spend hours a day, but I do need to know a little bit about what the agenda is for the meeting or what do I need to reinforce or what do I need to dig a little deeper on. So yeah, Chris had you guys in a nutshell for those that don't know what we do, and that's probably many of you. We are contacted for marketing, and we've been doing it for 48 years, and we're very good at it. And I'll get more into that later. But people that call and say, how much is it? It's an impossible question for me to answer because I don't know, man. On the phone, I have no idea until I get into your system, until I understand what you're losing and why you're losing it. And I would love to know how other companies do it when people are like, how much is it? Because I just say, we'll get to that when we get into the office. First things first, let's get to know you and get to know where your losses are occurring. So, ChrisAd is a very unique eligibility based business model. And all I mean by that is you got to prove to us that you're going to follow our proven effective systems before we'll market for you. And we lose a lot of business that way because some people don't want to do that. They want to do it their way. They want to take shortcuts.
But
And there's
but
art in it, man.
But I mean, I read an email from that Cory sent earlier today, and it was highlighting some of the most top performing practices that he's working with. And Chrisad practices in general are of the biggest size that is
Sure.
basically known to the dental industry. Like,
Sure.
I've never come across a practice, and we work with about 500 Chrisad practices. We work with about another 1,000 of other types of practices that are not Chrisad based. And I observe empirically over the macro that nobody has bigger practices than Chris had, and I think it reminds me of one of the early principles that it's the market demand is far greater than what you may be able to intake and expose.
Yeah.
And what you guys have done is align the operations in such a way to open up the flow, and when you can do that, you'll be bigger and busier than ever. I mean, I feel sorry sometimes. I see people having new patient numbers of 5 a month or 10 a month, and I think every doctor thinks that it's a marketing problem. And I think what Chris had has really unlocked is that this is an operational alignment.
Correct.
There's many other pieces to this, and once you unlock that recipe, you guys run a
Isn't it
convention
pretty
called
simple
No
recipe
Limits.
too, right? Yeah, simple recipe. You know us well enough that you know how simple the recipe is. But sometimes the simplest recipe is the hardest thing to cook. I always use the analogy of like cacio e pepe, a very simple pasta. To make it correctly looks easy, but it's
I
not,
love
man.
it.
It's not. And yeah, Jesus, Colin. I mean, I'm glad that you look at our data and you say these guys are growing practices at levels unprecedented to most. And we take great
Yeah,
pride in that. But also our model, you got to remember, is to get the principal owner out of the chair, which ultimately requires developing associateships and using facilities and continually expanding hygiene and training people to have owner mentalities in your absence. Because I
yes.
believe, and I think most dentists that call me reinforce this, very few people that call us say, you know what I want to do? I want to work more. They typically say, I want to work less. I want to make more. And when they say, I want more new patients, what they really say when you strip it down is, I want more money. They don't want more new patients. They want more money. So I have to initially change what they think they want and instill in them what they actually want. And then, just like in your practice, in Noble, little by little, and it happens faster than you think because of the way that we put kind of an emphasis on the experience. If you get a patient, I know it sounds crazy, we do expect them to come back. And that compounding and that annuitization requires that the owner be agile enough to continually expand capacity.
So
And
important.
that's the one area that I find doctors greatly underestimate their own demand because they get enamored with open chair time. I just had a conversation this morning with somebody we know, Colin, together very well, who just consolidated a hygiene schedule because it was too open, in his opinion. Now, he just got off the 4th consecutive record month he's ever had. Never had more new patients, never had greater hygiene, never had higher production, never had higher collection. But that still wasn't enough. He still looked at it and said, there's too many open chair hours. But that's what it takes, right? I mean, there's a point where you can have overhead out of control, but you have to have availability
Yeah.
to get new
It's
patients in. And that's the first thing we enforce. You're not marketing until you can get me in today or tomorrow. I'm not asking new patients to wait 2 weeks. That's insane. In our greatest practices and our most high volume, most prosperous, most productive, that's a strict rule and a guideline. Today and tomorrow. Those are your options to get new patients in. Anybody listening, if you want more new patients, you'll understand the power of immediacy. That's your greatest marketing tool. It's get them in now. And you see it because you track it. That's one of the cool features of your program. You track the duration between inquiry to appointment universally. You can see the ones with 2, 3, 400 new patients a month have the smallest duration. The ones with 10 new patients a month have the longest duration. It's a simple correlation to look at. And truthfully, you guys, and I'll let you talk in a minute about a little bit more about what TeamCare does for us. But when we do those secret shopper calls, which is our means of kind of identifying how the inflow system works, I find on potential new clients, they think patients can get in this week, but the front desk looks at the schedule through an entirely different lens and is actually offering appointments that are weeks, if not months out. And the doctor has no idea because they look at the schedule and say, well, there's room, but there's not room because she doesn't see it the same way you see it. Or there's what do we say? Undue influence sometimes from somebody else in the back. Don't put somebody there. I need to leave early. That's too much. I won't finish in time. You would be amazed. And again, stuff you find when you go on site. All these weird connections that these people have and these dialogues they have between the front and the back and the way you schedule that the doctor's unaware of. So that's our job, man. We're just like
Yeah,
detectives. We're dental
and I think
detectives, kind of.
you are. I know you are. I've seen it so many times, and I think sometimes I go back to some of the early days, and I've been traveling with you and other Chrisad folks,
And I
maybe
love it. Always
hundreds of
invited. Come
offices,
more.
and
Yeah.
the reason I do it is for the same reasons you do it. You get to learn and see things at a different level. You can walk into an office that hasn't been updated in 15 years, and the bathroom's a mess, and there's toilet paper on the ground, and the doctor will blame marketing every time, and they
Right.
will overlook these obvious patient experience issues that are not making people refer and not making people. I think you guys have really uncovered for me and a lot of folks all of these like realities that they just tend to often overlook or not think about. Even in our case at our office, we were in a fourth story building
Yeah.
of an officeplex with no signage, and you guys will make examples all over the world, like people, Apple billboards, all people. We had this main street, and like nobody could even see us, and you guys had told us to go buy a broken down truck and wrap it like a billboard and park
Right.
it out front, and immediately we saw numbers grow. And people think that marketing is always Google and stuff like that, but that is one of the most powerful marketings that I've ever experienced or
Sure.
seen. And
Yeah.
I think it's like something that you do so well.
Listen, man,
And
the way we look at this, Colin, it's kind of funny. When you Google dentist near me, which, a lot of people do, and really, when you look at it, what separates you from the other 10 practices that come up? The answer is nothing except for your name. And people will choose the name they see the most. That's the way purchasing happens. It's like the basic tenet of advertising. If you get my name in front of a consumer first, well, now we're familiar with each other. Now I kind of inherently trust you. So I'm not an anti digital guy. Geez, everybody eventually ends up on a website, whether it's to get a name or do a little research or it's part of the purchasing journey. But what we do realize, and we host a couple thousand of these websites, is the most common search terms are commonly your name or a derivative of your name. And the bigger your building, the bigger your signage, the bigger your brand, the better your web presence. So that's where I find a lot of people think like when they call me, they're like, I need to get more reviews. I need to rank higher on Google. And those are great goals to have, but neither of them actually will correlate to success because reviews don't parlay into money because you can have thousands of good reviews and be a stagnant, declining dental practice, as I'm sure some of these people are listening. And you can spend a lot of money, but if you don't have places to put them, then you can't grow. It's like third grade supply and demand, man. You can only sell what's there. And you have figured out, and I have figured out, that's all that matters. That's all. It's basic supply
yeah,
dictates demand, and
it's a
dentistry needs to
little.
realize that that's true in their business too.
Yep, and if you build it, they will come. It's I mean, you talked about the compounding annuity of
Yeah.
hygiene, and it's the cyclical nature. The gift of dentistry is the 6-month recurring model,
Yep.
and if you can proactively get ahead of it and open capacity and market to fill it and do it again and again, I think one of the most powerful things that I felt like being a part of the ChrisAd network was this. I mean, first of all, the value of having these extra eyes in office to kind of
Sure.
smoke out blind spots, but then also the fraternal network of there's people
Yeah.
that are always been ahead of us, behind us, and we've always been able to ask up to people that are doing it better. And I think that's been a really great sort of camaraderie. But also, once you start to get into this flow of growing, some of the next challenges become like business challenges, operational challenges. Like, our office is now doing 1,200 hygiene patients a month. Like, for a lot of people, that would be an operational nightmare, and it still is for us who have a pretty
Sure.
good handle on it.
Yeah.
But it's hard to grow in that way where, I mean, most doctors might by themselves do 100 or 150 hygiene visits a month. But if you really get a hold of this growth process, you're going to be quickly doing 300, 400. You're going to have 5x the business. And I think that
That's
a lot
correct.
of the principles have been really business principles about how to navigate through that with the guiding North Star of, hey, you got to get out of the chair. And in order for you to get out of the chair, you got to put 3 of you beneath you to replace that income. And if you can do this, you'll be sitting on a beach in the Bahamas, I think, as it goes.
Well, you read that email yesterday, man. I mean, again, and I'm telling you the truth. I've had so many doctors get in car accidents and skiing accidents. And I was referencing one guy that got bit by a spider. Literally, he couldn't practice anymore. He developed necrosis in his hand. The stuff does happen. And all we really say is it's a phenomenal goal to become the best dentist, and you should. But that's a trap because when you're the best dentist, you have to be there on site to deliver the best dental care. And what we really want you to develop is in terms of a muscle. It's not the best clinical skills, it's the best managerial acumen, the best understanding of your data, the best understanding of your numbers. And again, it's like you and I agree on this 100%. We don't count your new patients till they come back into hygiene. So it puts an emphasis on the experience. It's very easy to get bodies in a door. It's quite challenging to keep them. And again, a lot of the challenges are things that we consider to be like, I don't know, second nature. Well, why didn't you reappoint them? That sounds pretty simple, but a lot of practices only reappoint 3/4 of their patients and they don't really have a good system. You have thankfully developed a great system that you took a lot of our manual stuff and you digitized it. You guys have made our lives incrementally easier. I cannot
Yeah.
stress that enough.
Well,
Incrementally, massively,
it's
massive
it's
differences.
it's been a great little symbiotic relationship where I remember some of the old school Chrisad systems. You guys would
Yeah.
supply us with a sheet that you put next to
Daily
your
faxes.
desk, and people had to write down the patient's name and if they pre-appointed them and stuff like that.
But
But
that's how you determine engagement too. That was like a litmus
it
test.
is,
If
it is
you did it, I knew you were in it with me. If you didn't do it, I kind of had my suspicions about you, man. Like you think I can do it on my own? I'm just a marketing guy. At the end of the day, you're the owner. You're either with me or you're not.
with you. But I took that as a challenge. I was like, Chris said, this is 2025. You cannot give
I know.
people pen and paper systems. I want to change this. And actually when you spoke earlier about I've witnessed this too with you in office. It's like you go walk into an office and you observe the physical space and you're kind of making mental logs of things. But one of the most powerful things that you can do is, all right, let me get behind that desk and let me see your schedule. And that really just gives you such a pulse of how things are going. And I think that for some clients for many years, you used to have to like say, hey, send me a picture of your schedule. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah, yeah.
that was something I was like, I think this can be really valuable to Chris at if TeamCare can automatically suck that out and give you really, real great visibility on your iPhone app while you're on the road, on your desktop, whatever. It's like, we got to be able to see the schedule and we can't rely on people sending us screenshots. That's not going to work.
Correct. You're right. Well, you guys, I'm going to tell you a story. This happened last week. And again, this is a TeamCare client. So, in addition to seeing the schedule, one of the things that, and please, anybody listening, this is a great lesson, really, for you to take. I asked the doctor to go count availability and what was unfilled. Okay, they're very simple. What's there and what's unfilled for the month, February. I asked the front desk to do the same. I am not lying. The disparity was 200 hygiene visits. The doctor counted 200 more than the front desk. But who does the scheduling? The front desk does. So the doctor is operating under the premise, we call it fake hygiene. The fake hygiene that he thinks is in there. He thinks that there's an assistant available. He thinks the hygienist has agreed to this. He thinks there's an overflow column. He thinks they're over scheduling non-confirmed patients. Truth is, they weren't doing any of that. And it took, and I'm not kidding, it took months and months of me saying the same thing, where I don't think she's looking at the schedule the same way. So one of the things you can get out of this is be relentless. Okay. I mean, I did have to say the same thing 10 times. I finally got through to him on the 10th time. Will you just go count it yourself, please? And then don't tell her what the number is and have her count it and report back. Anybody who is owning a dental practice or managing, please don't feel bad if you have to repeat yourself. I have to repeat myself every day. I've worked with the same clients for 28 years, literally. And I take great pride in that because we have no contracts. These guys are voluntarily, they continue with us and it's a good relationship. But I mean, I don't go in there all the time with new concepts. A lot of times you got to go back and be like, hey, you forgot to do stuff you used to do. I don't know when this policy got amended or abolished, but that is something that stick to the basics too, I guess is my lesson. There's a lot of things to manage in a dental practice, but the basics, the pre-appointment that you help us with, the reactivation that you help us with, the revenue per exam, the open chair hours. These are really fundamentals, like the amino acids of building a dental practice, and they cannot be overlooked. And I can take 4 or 5 characteristics that you guys help us manage now, and I can predict within 99% accuracy whether you are growing or declining. And that's not to say I'm some soothsayer or some wizard. I'm not. You just see enough dental practices. I've worked in thousands of these things. They're all kind of the same. We run them on the same premise. You can do whatever you want, whether you're 3 chairs, 6 chairs, 10 chairs, 20 chairs. Because as you said earlier, you've been given the greatest gift in annuity business. People that leave with their next appointment scheduled. People that know they're supposed to come back. I mean, I'm sitting in a parking lot. These stores would love to have that, man. They don't know if these guys are ever coming back to these places of business ever again. Dentistry has this gift. And what I think we learned, you guys, and I want to share this with everybody, in 6 months, the key to your continued growth, whether you have signed up more labor yet or not, is you need to believe that the patients are going to come back. So you need to create more availability in 6 months. And all I mean by that, for those listening, is if you have currently 1 doctor and 2 hygienists, in 6 months, you have to have more than 2 hygiene columns because you're reappointing everybody, you're getting new patients in, and you're going to want more new patients. That has been eye-opening, I hate to say it, to hundreds and hundreds of practices that are often wondering, why am I not growing? And why are they not growing? Because they're not creating more space to grow. So that is the basic premise of our business, man. As you guys have done very well. You have 7 doctors now. You didn't
Yeah,
start
Corey.
with 7 doctors. Yeah.
No, certainly not. I'd love for you maybe to share maybe even more tactically at this point. I think what kind of reminds me is that doctors will chase after new patients and they'll market to fill them. And
Correct.
let's just say an office might get 20 new patients, but if you didn't add that capacity, those 20 patients kind of took the spots of the returning patients that would have otherwise come in. But had they created 20 more spots, they could have kept their and retained that same returning
That's right.
population
Yeah.
and then accommodated the additional 20 new patients that would contribute to growth. Now, my question, you know that concept extremely well. How are offices doing that? Like, I think I saw in your email, people were having dedicated new patient columns. I think
There's a
you
couple of
might
ways.
talk
Yeah.
about
Yeah, man.
the 45-minute hygiene procedure. Tell these
Sure. Yeah,
things you
yeah.
see that
Well, let me
yeah.
give you like and again, there's lots of ways to do it. I can just tell you what I see. There's an office here in Michigan I mean, literally, this young lady is just killing it, killing it. She's smart, so whiff smart, and has great management and great systems and the best incentive system that I've seen in a long time. So we'll touch upon that. People that work there are getting wealthy. They're not just getting a couple of $100s. They're getting wealthy because these guys are willing to share the wealth. And they have an ownership mentality from the entire organization, whether you're front desk, area tech, manager, departmental head. But when you're talking about dedicated new patient columns, this office gets 200 to 300 new patients a month, and they're growing at a rate of $2.5 million a year. And they're in the same facility. So, I mean, this will show you, like, they're killing it. But we started to realize new patients were getting booked out. That's just the way it works. You're asking new patients to wait 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And then new patients started to descend, 170, 180. Well, they added dedicated new patient columns on Saturday only. That's it, just Saturday. And in the month of January, 36% of their total new patient numbers, which were 200 and something, came in on Saturday, and they're only open 30 hours on that Saturday. So it ended up being like 60 new patients, 65 new patients came in on those days alone. And now we're going to take that and do it every day. We're going to have
And
dedicated new
Corey,
patient columns every day so that there's nothing that's going to impede the new patient from gaining access. It will
yeah,
always be open.
is that kind of making a calculated trade-off? You're like, you know what? Mrs. Smith that's been with me for 20 years, she doesn't really care if her, her 6-month cleaning appointment is this week or next week or whatever. If she calls back, she can wait, she can reschedule. But my new patients, that customer's more fragile. They want it now. And so we're like making sure with the dedicated column
Yeah,
that
we're
that
not trying to
happens.
trade. We're trying to do it all. We're trying to see them all. Let's be honest right now. But yeah, there's I think you know this, Colin and Kyle, better than anybody. There's ratios that are pretty safe. The high probabilities that when you do a bunch of exams on a relatively healthy population, you're not always going to find a lot of work. So it becomes a volume game. And what we found is this young lady's in a nice market. It's got kids, young homeowners, not super affluent, and they're in relatively good shape. So we started to recognize that, for every 10 exam, you're only doing like 3 restorations. So it became, we need more, we need more, we need more because we don't want to kick these guys out. We don't want to jettison them. They're great people. They just don't have any treatment needs right now. So we need to create more. So that is, yes, shrink the time allotted to the hygiene visit. 60 minutes. I know I'm the enemy in the eyes of a lot of people when I say this. I do not believe you need 60 minutes. I do not. And the reason I can say that is because of the many hours I've spent in your offices where I watch the hygienist come get the doctor at the 32nd minute of the majority of hygiene visits, and they say, "Doc, I need an exam." Usually in the middle of my meeting. So we've scheduled an hour, and he's getting interrupted 8 times to come do exams. So we started to track it. Again, you track it, we track it. The length of time they're actually scaling teeth is not close to an hour. And a lot of the data we've had in the past suggests people don't want to be there anyways. So it's like win-win. You can get them out faster. You can see more of them. You're operating on PPO fees, most of you. So you cannot allot an hour of time in many of these cases to somebody who really has no real dental needs. And those patients were eating into the availability. So we had to create more availability. You have to. So we shrank the recall, added dedicated new patient columns, incentivized the team on exams and on collections because new patients are worth greater value. Incentivized the departmental heads to oversee their teams and make sure that the things were efficient and they ran smoothly and the reactivation was occurring and the schedule was full. And slam dunk, man. Just like we all know it'll happen. Slam dunk. There's nothing that
So
crazy about it.
now I know. I had actually, it brings to mind to me some of the topics you at the back. One is about assisted hygiene. Number two is
Yeah.
about attrition and overbooking in the schedule and chasing that last 20, 30%. But I want to maybe mention this because I think it's a good analogy of the industry. We actually worked with recently a large DSO group whose owner was looking at their kind of fill rates and being upset about the amount of labor he was paying for and the disparity between the number of patients that were proportionally seen. For example, I'm paying a hygienist 8 hours and she's only seeing 5 or 6 patients.
Pretty common, man. Yeah. Pretty common.
Pretty very
75% full.
very
Yeah.
common. And so, I'm gonna get to the end first, and I want you to kinda comment on it because I think it's gonna be really common. The guy was wanting to, kind of make a move to change that on the bottom line of the business. That's like, "Hey, I wanna be more utilized with my labor." And so talked about opening up an additional column and
Yeah.
then marketing, making reactivation calls to fill it. And there was a complete kinda upheaval from the staff. Hygienists were disgruntled, did not wanna do it, kind of poo-pooed the whole thing and said, "We're not doing that," and I dug
Can't
their
happen.
heels into the ground. And so how if an office kinda wants to embrace some of these concepts of we're full, but we're full at the start of the day. We're not full at the end of the day when we look
Yeah.
backwards.
Sure,
So
man.
there's that 20, 30% loss. If we're shrinking the schedule and like maybe my appointments are going from 60 minutes to 30 minutes and my hygienist is only used for 30 minutes and stuff like that, like what have you seen that really works for people that want to make that leap?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you have to believe your numbers. Your numbers do tell a story. So first, you have to be familiar with your occupancy rate, historical occupancy rate. So you look back and you see what the patient base actually does. And then, as you alluded to, a lot of times it's 75% full. So there's a certain amount of volatility that's guaranteed to occur, and you have to trust that, and you have to be okay with that. So we ask you guys to understand probabilities. But more importantly, it's compensation systems. If you're ever going to ask somebody to see more patients than they normally would in an 8 hour, 60-minute appointment day, you have to reward them. You have to incentivize them. You have to compensate them. So I would say for the last 10, maybe 15 years, we have been fully embracing a system that is essentially you do not pay them per hour, you pay them per patient. And you can pay them, Jesus, man. I mean, if they use an assistant, they can see 14, 15 patients a day. And the per patient model is essentially take the $50 you would have given them per hour, give it to them per patient, and it gets them involved in keeping the schedule full. It entices them
Totally.
to consider using an assistant. It entices them
Now,
to think about shrinking the length of time. Yeah, go ahead.
I know I've seen successes with this, and I know when you put this on a spreadsheet, it works really great, and you can make the numbers go to the moon.
Sure.
And a
Yeah.
lot of people have embraced that culture with their teams and been extremely wildly successful doing it. But there's probably, I mean, you can probably think of many that have maybe failed. The staff has maybe spoken harder, and the owner
Big time.
doctor
Yeah.
loses that battle. And so tell me what you think about like that situation. What's the best way if you were to deliver this to a staff and you're going to have people that don't want to do it and you might have people that want to do it? Like, how do you make it go like that? I think it's a big problem
I
I
mean,
see
a
with a
lot
lot
of
of
times, man, it's like
offices.
stick your toe in the water. If somebody does dig their heels in and they're like, well, that'll never work. Our patients are different. We rely on the experience, all that crap. Really, all you got to do first is point to the data, Colin. I mean, again, you have given us access to their data so I can see their attrition rates. So when their initial argument is we deliver something exceptionally better than anybody else does, well, that may be true, but the data usually suggests that it's not, that your rate of attrition is just as high or low as the guy down the street. So you first have to kind of like shatter that and be like, well, listen, man, I know we do deliver great care here, but your patients are still leaving. So that is how we first get their attention, is give them a big old slammer list of the amount of patients that you have lost in the last year, 2 years, 3 years, patients that were one time in your hygiene cycles that are no longer there. And our assumption is you will not know if they are still here or who is truly lost until you expand capacity. And we make that argument with the doctor first, that this business is all about exams. That's the only currency we work in. If you do not do more exams, you will not grow your practice.
Revenue generating event, right?
Revenue generating event. You're exactly right. So all of the work that you like doing, crowns and implants and Invisalign and arches, whatever, you have to do the exam first. It's the one true originator of revenue. So the way we calculate it, man, when the doctor says, I have a goal and I want to do $200,000 a month, what's the first thing we're going to do? We're going to find out what your average or aggregate revenue per exam is. How much money do you generate per exam? And then we reverse engineer the schedule and we share that with them and say, you will never accomplish this goal. It is unattainable because you don't have enough hours. You don't have enough availability. You don't generate enough per exam. The labor is incorrect. You're using the chairs incorrectly. I mean, I think we get pretty creative with this stuff. We don't want to increase your overhead. That's step number one. So I will always start with assisted hygiene because the doctor always has an assistant or two, and there's usually a hygienist on site. So you can use the labor a little differently throughout the day without incurring more labor costs. As an example, if you work Saturdays in our practices, and most do in our practices, those days are dedicated predominantly to exams, man. You know that and I know that. It's new patients, emergencies, and diagnostics. That's it. We do not allow restorative to be scheduled on that day. We do not do surgeries. We don't do operative. We use them as uh, an incubator. We're going to do 40, 50, 60 exams today on Saturday. And that's where I always say, let's just try it on one day. The hygienist gets the assistance today. The doctor is attentive. He's on time. He has nothing else that's, pulling him away or distracting him. He's only talking about treatment needs. And what we found is that doctors that do one thing without trying to juggle 10 things do it a lot better. They
Mm,
generate higher revenue
true.
per patient. They're more focused. They're concentrated. They can answer questions. They can alleviate concerns. They can walk their patient up to the desk themselves to ensure that the patient's schedules. Because you walk a patient up yourself as a doctor, I guarantee you your success rate with treatment plan closure is a hell of a lot better than if the assistant does. We've seen this. So that's the only way we can get it, man. If a hygienist doesn't want to use an assistant, I'm not going to make her. And if a hygienist doesn't want to shorten the length of time from 60 to 50, I'm not going to make her. I'm just going to give you a compelling argument mathematically about patient loss, how I'm willing to compensate you. I want you to be rewarded. I want you to understand I appreciate what you're doing. But if they don't want to do it, I've learned a long time ago, man, just go get another hygienist. But again, the cheapest way to do it is just use the existing labor force, use the facility different throughout the day, and that exam only concept we do on Saturdays, we do after work, we do on bank holidays. That's how you get more bodies in the door, man. And again, it's nothing too crazy, but it seems like a lot of people they think we're unconventional, but I don't think we are. I think we're actually very insightful in this type of stuff. So I hope I answered your question, but I don't know, man. I don't know if that was
Yeah,
it.
you 100% did. I think a lot of people can hear the concepts and maybe struggle with bridging the gap, but I think dipping your toe in the water and like I think Chris had and you particularly, I mean, even as a whole, like you guys are some of the most masterful people at interpreting the data and making it a practical application into like real office change. And I think that, with team care, you guys have recommended so many things. Hey, can you build this? Can you do that? Yeah,
Yeah,
great idea. Let's
yeah.
do it. But I think that message, if we just built charts and graphs and data, practice owners and practice staff don't necessarily have the desire to engage with it. And I think there's a
Well, I
really
can tell you
powerful
that, man.
gap. You
There's a
guys are the
million
best
dentists that I work with
interpreters.
that they don't know their numbers. They ask me how they're doing. Now, how embarrassing is that? How am I doing? Well, you don't know? Okay, I'll tell you. Yeah.
I've heard that question so many times. It's so funny. Oh, I'm glad Cory's gonna come in. He's gonna tell me how I'm doing.
Yeah, man, I that's sad, man. I don't know.
I know we gotta wrap this up soon, but we could chat for
No,
hours and
no,
hours.
Yeah,
let's
let's
keep
do it.
going.
In an effort to wrap this up into a bow, I want to share an observation. There's a really well-known author and thought leader in the human performance space, specifically running. His name's Steve Magnus, and he talks a lot about what separates Olympians and elite athletes from average people and how do you get there. And the answer, similar to how you become an incredible practice, is right in front of you. And it comes
Yeah.
down to consistency. It comes down to showing up every day and stacking great workouts day after day, the same way you stack great days at the office. Now, here's the really exciting thing that Cory is saying, and that I want every practice owner to really understand. There are Olympians that are born with God-given physical abilities. And so you could always say, oh, well, I'm never going to run a 4:30 mile for 26 miles, no matter how many workouts I stack on top of one another. There are no God-given attributes required to build a successful dental practice. You don't need that cheat code. All you need is the consistency, and that is something that doesn't need talent. Showing up
Well,
every
I'll tell
day.
you this, Kyle. I've never had in all my years, and literally I've worked in thousands of practices. Never has someone called me and said, "I need your help," when they're already successful. So anybody who is worried about where they are now, all the people that we say be like that, and Colin here, look at he's got 7 doctors and is doing all this revenue. They called us at their lowest point, and we take great pride in that, man. I mean, I've always said it's one of my favorite things to say to you, kind of, is your success validates my career. If you do really well, then that speaks really well about me. And for a marketing company, I get a hell of a lot of leads, just word of mouth. And I think that, again, people need to remember it does happen fast. For one thing, your growth actually occurs fast once you're on the track. But even though that might seem distant, like, oh my God, I'll never be this Olympian. I'll never be this big, generous practice that's doing multiple millions and the doctor doesn't work. Well, they weren't that practice 3 years ago either. They were grinding it out 6 days a week with one doctor. And I'm just telling you, it can happen really fast and it's not easy. So anybody who thinks that we have, read this 6-page book and you'll be good. No, it's not easy. It requires work on everybody's behalf. Mine, yours, TeamCare's,
Amen.
everybody pitches in. Yeah.
Cory, I mean, thank you so much for being on. This has been
Thanks
a
for having
pleasure.
me, you
And
guys. Yeah.
and we will have you back. There's at least at least two other segments with you. But for those that are picking up what Cory is putting down and
Yeah.
you
You
want to
smell what
speak
I'm
with
talking
him,
about?
please visit chrisad.com. You can also
Yep.
find Cory on LinkedIn, and we will share his information in the show notes. Cory,
Yeah,
thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you,
Cory,
Colin. Thank you, Kyle.
chief new client officer, right? So if, they're likely
Yeah,
to speak with you coming
they
into
will.
the business, has such a deep understanding of the mechanics of a dental business. His clients, I've witnessed it, come sprinting to the door to hug them.
Okay.
It starts and ends with a hug. Awesome having you on, Cory. Thanks so much. This was really fun.
Thanks, you guys. Look forward to doing it again. Take care now.
Thank you for listening to The Extraction with Colin Ambler and Kyle Bergman. Read episode notes and transcripts at teamcaredental.com.